Sort of start out, I know a lot of you here aren't exactly from the CC community as much, so I wanted to give a brief overview of sort of what the Community Engaged Leadership Program is that I've been a part of for these past few years. So this is a direct quote, but the things that I sort of wanted to highlight, first of all, is in that it emphasizes integration of learning with solving problems, and so that it's really about sort of doing academic studies and co-curricular experiences, and so trying to get those to culminate into sort of making an impact on the world. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about here are sort of what those different pieces have been for me and how that culminated into the Capstone project that I screened today. So starting off, I feel always a little bit weird about like reading my resume off, especially when it's to people who I care a lot about, and I don't really feel like they need to know what my resume is, but it feels sort of deliberate in the situation such as this to sort of talk about what some of the work that I've done in this past 4 years have been. So a few of the different community engaged works, sort of as I've defined them for myself. One of my biggest partners has been working with National History Day, which for those of you who don't know is a history education program that's basically teaching kids about history, but through a creative process. And so that's been one of my main partners, but engaging with that has been a little bit more challenging in these COVID times. Some of the other community engaged work, I think of the campus community as being as much of a part of my community as sort of a wider reaching one. And so for me, a lot of my engagement has also been focused on how do we build a sense of community on and around CC's campus, and sort of how do we stretch that community out beyond us. So working in the Office of Admission the past 3 years has given me a really great chance to get to know sort of what is CC, but also what is CC sort of as it relates to the wider world. And then through working in the QRC and Res Life, I've sort of been able to narrow in on the local community and sort of the students who are here and whose lives are shaped by being here. The last one, while I was abroad, I also continued some of my engagement work, so I just wanted to shout that out as well. But for me, sort of engagement has been a thread throughout the work that I've been doing while a student at CC. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but the community engaged coursework has also been something that has sort of shaped my learning. I will admit a lot of these classes aren't officially community-based learning classes, but they were ones that for me really sort of shaped my understanding of the community that I'm in here, how I can be a member of the community, how I can make change. And so this is sort of a chronological list of some of the classes that to me felt like they had some sort of community purpose and that shaped the learning and the work that I have done in my time as a student. So let's talk about the capstone. That is sort of part of why we're here right now, is to talk about the capstone experience. And so there's sort of a few things here sort of at the outset that for me sort of shaped where we are now. So the first thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, COVID made continuing some of the existing projects that I had going on very challenging. I think if you had asked me, say, a year and a half ago, what I thought my capstone would be related to, I probably would have thought something maybe connected to my work with the National History Day program, or maybe some of my other work sort of with the wider outside of CC community. But the reality is that it's been a lot harder to connect with communities sort of outside of our campus this past year. And so instead, I sort of made it a goal to pursue maybe a project that was still going to be true to my interests and those engagement pieces that I mentioned earlier, but also recognized the reality of this year and the fact that some of the things that we had preconceived notions about how this year we're going to go weren't necessarily as possible. So the development of my specific capstone project went through sort of a number of stages. It started out actually as an idea that was co-created with the Office of Admission and the Peak Inquiry Project. And the idea there was actually to sort of make a piece about the CCE and what does community engagement work look like at Colorado College. And while that was a project I was really excited about and interested in pursuing, the reality is that it came to pass for a couple reasons. First of all, that capturing community, like trying to capture what the CCE is this year didn't feel quite genuine, because while the CCE does a lot of really terrific work, trying to capture the CCE as like an organization in this year felt, first of all, maybe a little bit of a big project to try to take on, but also was maybe not going to be as true to what this year looked like. Also, my own constraints made that project become a little bit more challenging, but at the same time, I tried to recognize, and I did come to recognize, that there was still a lot of really awesome work happening on and around campus this year, and that sort of focusing specifically on how that work has changed this year and been something that has been really valuable even amidst all of the sort of changes was something that I thought was a lot more genuine and true to what CC looks like right now and what engagement work looks like. And so sort of the goal of my piece was to capture the resilience that has come through this year, the perseverance that people have had. And I often find, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but I often find in my own work, while I don't center my own voice, I like to focus on voices of things that I think matter. I hope that that's the way that most people feel about the work that they create, but sort of that in focusing on the resilience and perseverance of others, that I could sort of bring to light that there's been a lot of perseverance and resilience that's happened just on a broader scale for all of us, not just the people who were highlighted in the film. So a little bit about some of the skills that I in particular thought both set me up well to do this project and allowed me to be successful. The first thing is, I think most of you on the call know about my video editing sort of background, but for those of you who don't, I actually attended a film school from 6th grade through 12th grade. And so film was really something that shaped my pre-CC experience and has been something that I've tried to bring into my life as I sort of continue. While I've been pursuing mathematical economics as a major, film is something that I still see as a really great medium to sort of share ideas and sort of enhance storytelling. Also, I have found some various ways to hone that in the past 4 years, including shout out to Jordan and Anthony's engaged journalism class, got to use some film stuff there. My work with the National History Day program has sort of helped me to hone that skill in other students and sort of it's fun to tie that all together here at the end of my CC journey. Some other things, my interest in higher education, which has sort of been honed through coursework as well as through my job in the Office of Admission, sort of helped me to think more about what CC is, how it works, and sort of think about how to communicate those ideas to others. While this isn't the idea that admissions had necessarily pitched at the outset, I still think that this project maybe has some possibility to do some of the stuff that they wanted to be done in the first place. Also, from a sort of more practical side of things, I've been conducting interviews for the past year in the Office of Admission, and so the confidence with doing Zoom interviews was something that set me up really well to be comfortable talking to lots of different people and sort of figuring out both how do I get them to tell me their story, but do it in a way that it feels to them like they're enjoying the experience rather than just me forcing them to tell me like random things. And then just sort of generally, this builds on a desire that I had to capture the changes that have sort of become realized in the past year. And that I feel like that passion is something that allowed me to succeed in this project. This is just sort of the nitty gritties of the timeline of what I created, because I don't know, I'm a data person, so I like to give numbers, and maybe none of you care about my numbers, but I care about my numbers, so you're getting them. At the outset of this project, I reached out to 11 different students and faculty across the campus community. I ended up conducting 7 interviews, which all made it into that finished film. 6 of them were students and 1 of them was a faculty member. It was my goal to both show that students have been doing really great things, but also that our faculty have been doing really terrific things in this time as well. I collected over 3 hours of footage, which I think both seems very large and also very small. I've done projects that have had much more footage than that. So in some ways I'm like, oh, only 3 hours of footage, it's fine. But also the finished film is 7 minutes long. And so trying to figure out how to turn 3 hours of really terrific interviews into something that was just 7 minutes long was a real challenge, but something that I found really fun. And so then after collecting that, I edited into a short film that I screened today. I think most of you were there to watch the screening of the film. I've got the link at the end for anyone who hasn't had a chance to watch it yet, but know that I captured a number of different people and talked about their different engagement. Well, they talked about their engagement through my editing, and that it was a really fun project to put together. I also want to shout out, unfortunately, Caleb couldn't be on the call today, but Caleb was really my partner in crime through all this. He was at 5 of the 7 interviews, really helped me out throughout the ideation stages all the way through to completion, was, I think, my first person to watch the film after I made a rough cut. And so this project really wouldn't be possible without his work. So I just wanted to shout him out while I'm on this slide. So this would be the video, but for time's sake and the fact that most of you have seen it already, I'm not going to show it again, but just the link is at the end. So if you want to watch it, or if you want to go watch it 5 times, I mean, I really can't stop you from watching it again, but I'm not going to use my time right now to watch the video again, except it's going to play anyway. Okay, there we go. So then, another piece here is sort of to look at the outcomes of this work. And so one of the goals of CEL and the CEL capstone is that you create a piece that both is important and has sort of effects in and of itself, but also sort of has some long-term impacts. And so the next 2 slides will sort of look at what the wider reaching impacts of the film were, both on the community, but also on myself. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is that I think for these people who were conducting really cool community work, this project hopefully gave an opportunity to share about the really awesome work that's happening. For me, it was really cool to both get to connect with people that I'd sort of encountered throughout my CC journey and see where they are now, as well as meet some really awesome people that I don't know if I would have met otherwise. It also makes me kind of bummed that I'm on my way out because there's all these cool people that I'm like, wow, I just met you, you know, this month, and now I'm off on my way and you're going to continue to do really awesome things. That said, I think the opportunity to highlight this really terrific work is good, both for the people who are doing the work, but also just to sort of show that there has been this real ability to continue and continue to do really great things sort of in the time of COVID. Also, I think this event, CERN has had to pivot. And so, you know, as in the virtual format. And so for me, it was fun to get to play a little piece and figuring out what the virtual CERN looked like, and sort of get to play a piece and showing what these changes have looked like and how this work is being done this year. And then finally, on a sort of more personal side of things, it's been really fun, again, to get to use my creative skill set to produce some work that has community outcomes. A lot of the film that I've been doing in the past 4 years has been sort of fun stuff. And while that's been enjoyable, it was fun to get another opportunity to make sort of a serious documentary film that was about something that I cared genuinely about. Moving forward, just sort of the longer lasting impacts as I see them. First of all, I think that this lays the groundwork for completing that admission project that was initially proposed. I think that this can be sort of a standalone project. There's been discussion of potentially putting it on the CCE website or sharing it in ways already, but I think that this also gives opportunities to sort of start thinking about what a project could look like to capture community engaged work as it could be in the future. And if admissions still wants that, I think this sort of, maybe Caleb will do that. He's not here, so I can tell him that he's going to do whatever he wants, and he's not here to say that he won't do it. So maybe that's a Caleb job. I don't know. I also think in times like this, when the world is changing, it's really important to capture those things in the moment. And so I think one of the things that this project also serves is it serves as a record of what this year looked like as it was happening. And so I think it has sort of, maybe it's lofty of me to say that it has long lasting intertemporal impacts, but I think to some extent, like the fact that it's capturing this engagement as it's happening has real potential to have change in the future. The last thing, this is my common theme throughout the whole thing, but just that it's really captured the resilience of our community throughout these tumultuous times. This last slide has a lot of different people and organizations on it, but I just wanted to shout out all of the people who have made this work possible, including Jordan, of course. Thank you so much for all of your help. Anthony unfortunately left us, but his help throughout my time here has been really important. The whole CCE staff has been terrific. You've heard me talk all about Caleb all the time already, but he was great and super helpful in this project, but also just he's been a really great person to be friends with this year. All my interview subjects, the project obviously wouldn't be possible without them. Kathy, Celeste, and Kayla are who I worked with in the History Day program and really helped with that part of my engagement. Darius, Colby, Marissa, Steve have been some of my bosses in my offices that I've been a part of that have really been part of my engagement at CC. Jess and Prachi have been advisors to me who have, I think, helped me sort of keep going amidst all this. The Betcher Foundation funded my education, so I gotta thank them for all of the work that they've done to allow me to be here. Professors and teachers, broadly defined, just, have made me who I am, have stretched my mind, my capabilities. And then, of course, I wouldn't be here without my amazing family and friends, who many of whom decided that they wanted to give a half hour on their Thursday to be here, which thanks to them, I guess, for, being here. So that's sort of my community engaged journey as I see it to now. But I wanted to leave some time to chat, answer questions, or don't, really whatever anyone wants to do. But I was trying to hit in with the, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes to spare so that we can chat. So that's it for my bit for now, but ask me anything, as they say.
Let's take a really quick pause just to give Bridget a little round of applause. Let them get a drink of water. Yeah, so we'll open it up to questions. That can be any question that's on your mind. This is an informal space for sure. So who would like to ask Bridget a question? Bridget, I know one of the questions that was on my mind when you were talking was, you talked about the creation of the video and how difficult it was to go from 3 hours to 7. But I'm wondering if you could reflect on the experience of interviewing people. Like what surprised you about what people shared, and then what maybe just like confirmed for you what you already knew? What did you learn in that process?
Yeah, so a few things. First of all, I sort of went into the first interview. I'm kind of bummed that Elena had to leave because she was my first interview, and I went in with her and I was like, so I've got a rough idea of what questions I want to ask you, but I'm just going to ask you a couple questions and hopefully we can sort of start to get some ideas for what this could look like. And so I think thanks to her as well for being my guinea pig and sort of helping to figure out what that could look like, and to Caleb for helping with creating the question ideas. But I think for me, I don't know if it was surprising as much as just like really gratifying to see all of the amazing things that people were sort of able to do, and learning about the things that people actually felt like were made possible by the pandemic and the fact that everything was virtual. And sort of that for some of the people I interviewed, that there was sort of this intentionality that came about from their work that happened because they had to think about it sort of in this COVID time and in this time where things were changed. And so that, that maybe changed the direction of organizational work, or that led to more breakout community partners being used, and sort of realizing that we spend a lot of time, I think, mourning what was lost this year. And I think that the thing that was really exciting to me was seeing that, yes, it's okay to look at this year and say, these are all the things that I wish could have been. But I think that there's so much more to be said for look at all the cool things that happened, maybe not even in spite of, but because of what this year has been.
Bridget, are you saying that the pandemic created opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise had we not had the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, but as well as for others, I think that there's been so much of like, this couldn't happen because of the pandemic, this thing was changed. But I think that recognizing that sort of you can still find community, you can still make change, that there are cool things that you can do because you're virtual, that you can, I mean, obviously the film was only 7 minutes long and there was so much that I did cut out, but like, I don't know, hearing from Philip about how he could go to all of these different city council meetings now that he never would have been able to go to before, or from Elena about like doing stuff at the Capitol while being on campus. I just think that like there's some really cool stuff that's sort of intertemporal and interspatial that is a lot more doable now, or hearing about CC Mutual Aid and how so much of their organizing efforts have been virtual, and that like had it not happened during this time, that maybe they would have been less successful because people wouldn't have been as tuned into technology. So I think just like realizing that there are a lot of cool things that this year has enabled, and I think also thinking about how do we continue to facilitate those cool things in the future. I think there's a lot of talk about let's just return back to normal and like try to get back to the way things were. And I think there's some benefit to doing that, but I think it's also important to be really intentional about which things from this year get kept rather than, you know, changed.
So Bridget, how are you going to take this project and use it in the future? What's your biggest takeaway, other than the gratitude that you just so eloquently said? But how are you going to use this in your next adventure?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the like artist in me says every project I work on helps me be better at doing the next one. So I think part of that is like, okay, the next time I go to do something like this, I've, you know, honed those skills a little bit more. I'm thankful for the connections that I sort of was able to hone as part of that, that sort of recognizing that there are really cool people who are doing cool things, and that now those are people that I think of as friends, or at the very least acquaintances, but certainly people that are feel like they're in my corner now. I'm hopeful that this film can also have some reach beyond today, that sort of thinking very specifically about this project, that someone will watch it, not in the next 12 hours, that like at least for the next, I don't know, few weeks, months, I don't know, that like it's something that people will want to watch and keep thinking about. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably other things, but
Hi, Bridget.
you don't call me that.
Well, you know, I'm code switching for the sake of your professional environment. Something that you just said made me just dream about, it would be so cool if a year from now you could do like a part 2 and hear about what's happening at the center where you work at CC, and then from the individuals who laid the groundwork that you were able to capture this year, and sort of what they have taken forward from this year, and also what it was like to navigate that transition back to whatever lies ahead. So I am curious what you're thinking about for yourself and your peers. Like, how are folks who do this engagement work that you're around preparing yourselves for what it will be like to sort of launch back into whatever this transformed world is going to be as things open up?
Yeah, I think it's sort of, I think one of the questions in my mind, and sort of what it seems like in the mind of many, is it going to be like a very fast transition where we're expected to sort of get back to a sort of normalcy immediately, or if it's going to be something that's sort of slowed. And I think it'll also be interesting, particularly because a lot of the people I was talking to are students, and while a lot of the community work continues sort of regardless of the year schedule, I think one of the things that'll be interesting is when students take 3 months off to go on summer break and then come back to campus, and it's a campus that's sort of expected to be back to normal in some sense. And so whether that means changing things back to the way that they were, or trying to sort of adopt new things. But I get the sense that a lot of what's come out of this year is sort of intentionality and thinking about what the work that's being done is and why it's being done. And so I think one of the things that was exciting for me to hear was people who said, you know, we didn't do as much work this year, but what we did do this year was think about what the mission of our organization is and how we can sort of maybe change what our specific actions are, because what we really want to do is meet this goal. So I'm thinking, like, for example, Julieta with AMA saying that a lot of what they'd been doing in the past was tutoring. And so, you know, they had a hard time figuring out how to do tutoring this year, but then recognizing that a lot of what AMA can also do is migration-based work. And so coming out of this, trying to figure out how to continue doing the things that were being done before, but also sort of adopting these new points of the mission. Also, my somewhat glib answer to the part about making a second follow-up film is that I know Caleb's looking for a capstone, so maybe that can be his capstone.
I don't think that's glib. I think that's a brilliant idea, passing along the work. We are right at time, so I would like to first thank Bridget for being Bridget and having the energy that you do, I think, in general. But thank you it's been such a pleasure getting to know you over the last 3 years, and congratulations for wrapping up your time at CC and in the Community Engaged Leadership Program, and for all your work on this project and storytelling tonight. Thanks to everybody else also for being here, and feel free to stick around if you have questions for Bridget. Otherwise, we appreciate your time and support of them, and I hope you all have wonderful evenings. And to shout out to all the family. It's so fun to meet family and to get to meet different parts of Bridget's life. So thank you for being here. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, Jen, Les, Chip.
Yeah,
Great job, Bridget.
that was awesome. Hun.
Great job, Bridget.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for coming.
It's good,
Yeah.
good to see
I've
Daniel
ne-
there.